Hey woodworkers, happy Friday. Miss Levy here. So we're gonna do our last home woodshop activity of the week. And it's gonna be all about how to make a cut list and how to make a cardboard mock-up or prototype, which is like a cardboard draft or a cardboard version of something that we might make out of wood eventually. So I am working on just a home project I have in these last few weeks. One of the many that I'm starting is a shave horse. So a shave horse, I can show you some examples. I have some drawings of my own of the shave horse that I'd like to build, which is after Roy Underhill's design. And then I'm going to show you some shave horses in my favorite book, one of my favorite woodworking books called Country Woodcraft. It's a tool that carpenters use, woodworkers use. Oh, just had a piece fall out there. It's an old book, so it's a little bit worn in on the spine and pieces can fall out, but here we go. So shave horses look something like that. That's what I'm working on, building a cut list and a prototype of today. Here's a shave horse in use. It's basically just like a giant clamp that you can use to hold a piece down while you shave off parts of the wood. It's really great for making spoons, taking bark off of larger pieces of wood or smaller. And you can make table legs, chair legs, lots of different pieces. They usually work really well on the shave horse if they are long and skinny, rather than fat and wide. So one of the most important skills to have as a woodworker is being able to make a cut list. So after I did all my research on what I wanted to build, I looked at lots of different shave horse designs. I did some of my own sketches. And then kind of during sketching, I usually start to make my cut list. I think about all the parts that I'm gonna need for my project. Like, okay, I'm gonna need legs, I'm gonna need a bench, I'm gonna need, for my project, there's something called a riser. So you think about all the parts, and then that's kind of like the beginning of your cut list. And I'll show you some of the details in a little bit. But step one for you is to go around your house and find something that has straight lines, so it doesn't have curvy pieces. Like you can see this chair that I'm sitting on actually is a good example of something not to use. It's got a curvy back. Maybe I can show you from the top. So you can see it's got a curvy back. You wouldn't want to use something curvy. So let me just get my phone back here. So find something that has straight lines, that's made of wood, and that has a really simple side view. Or when you look at it from the side, it's simple, nice and straight. You can see most of the parts it's made of from the side. That could be like a stool is a really good example, a bench, a table, a desk. Those are all things that most people will have in their house. It could even be a cabinet, but cabinets are a little more tricky. So crawl under it if you have to. Look at all the sides. Think about how many pieces is this made of? And even you can think about how they fit together. So for students of mine, this might sound familiar to you because we had an assignment that was called How's It Made? Where you found something wood in your house and you did a drawing of all the parts separately. You thought about how all the pieces kind of fit together and how that either machine or person made that object. So you're kind of starting to do that for this project. And you just want to find say it's a stool. You want to find that stool and think about, okay, it has 4 legs, probably. It might have some stretchers that go across between the legs. It definitely has a seat. And then if it has any other parts, you can start writing those down as well. So I'm just going to show you how, once you have your object, how you can start doing your cut list. And optional, if you want, before doing your cut list, before building that out, you can do a sketch of your object. That's a good way to really kind of like internalize, to get in your mind the object that you are studying. And theoretically, like, you can think about it like, okay, I'm gonna rebuild this stool myself, or I'm gonna take it apart and try to put it back together. But you won't quite get to that phase in this lesson with me, but you're welcome to, if your parents would want to build something with you, you're welcome to do that with them. Okay, so I'm gonna move to my workspace. So here we have my cut list, and you can see that it has a few different columns. I wrote, this is my cut list for, oh, sorry, it's a little tricky to show you. So I wrote, this is my cut list for my shaving horse project. And then you can see one column is the part name. One column is the quantity I need to cut. The thickness, that's what the T stands for. The width and the length. And then any notes, like I wrote a note that my neighbor Jay cut a pine board for me, and the bench, the riser, and the dove head are all from that pine board. Then I also have, you can see I have tape. This is optional. I have a bevel gauge. I don't really need that for right now, but it'll be useful for me when I start building. I have a Sharpie, a pen, scissors, and then you can use a straight edge. You can also use a measuring tape. Okay, so once you have all of your parts cut on your cut list written down, so say you have legs, right? You might write next to those legs how tall they are, right? How wide they are, and thickness might not apply if it's something round, okay? You can kind of write, like, you can either measure around it with a tape measure, or you can just measure across it and write that down. Either one works. You're just gonna need, if you have something round, you're just gonna need the kind of like how wide it is from side to side, that dimension. So you're gonna need the tape measure for that, of course. So you have, like, say you're doing a stool, you have the stool in front of you, and you measure all the parts. You write those down on your cut list, how many of each there are. You can even write down what kind of wood it is if you know. And then what I do is I lay my tape measure down on the floor, and I use that to measure cardboard pieces as I cut them. So for my shaving horse, it has, I'm just using wood that's 2 inches thick for the whole thing. So I cut a bunch of strips to start that were 2 inches wide, and your parent can help you do that with a ruler. And then from there, I was able to take my 2-inch strips, let's see if I can show you this, and kind of hold them up next to my tape measure, and then make sure they were the size that I thought they could be. So when I put together my shave horse in cardboard, I actually made a mistake and I cut 4 legs. You can see the legs are a little bit more wonky. They're kind of like not as straight because these are going to be made of branches. So I cut 4 of these, right? And I actually only need 2. I'll need 4 in real life, and that's on my cut list, but I'm only going to need 2 for the side view because you can really only see 2. So you might be wondering why I would make an example in cardboard. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I'll also say right now, something that's really fun to do in cardboard and really important to do is to think about, okay, how can my design change? So should my leg be like this? Should it be like this, right? Should this part be down here? Or should it go, oops, should it go up there, right? So it's really easy for me to rearrange all of that in cardboard, okay? So the other cool thing that you can do is you can write each name of each part on the cardboard. I highly recommend this. So this is my pedal or my treadle, my riser block, my riser, my dub head, right? And then I even have written over here, this is my bench. And you might notice that I drew lines where the pieces cross each other. And then here, I didn't get very exact, but I even drew where a peg is gonna go. So if you want, you can draw where fasteners are going to go, like pegs, like screws, or you can draw where you imagine they are in the thing that you are studying and prototyping. So cardboard mock-ups are really important because once we get to working with wood, as a lot of you probably know, especially if you're one of my students, you know that if you cut something out of wood, it's not like drawing with pencil and paper. You can't erase that. So it makes it really easy for us to, if we make a mistake when we're cutting in cardboard, we can just redo it. We can cut it shorter. We can tape two pieces together. And then we kind of get out all of our mistakes before we move to working with wood. And it's a perfect thing to do on a rainy day like today, and really great for prepping your mind for the project so that when you do get to working in wood, you're really, really ready. You have probably most of your measurements memorized, especially if it's a simple project. And I always do this for projects that I've never done before. So if I'm building something that I haven't built before, it's a really good idea, even for me, and a lot of professional woodworkers do this too, to build it out of cardboard. If you're interested in making profiles or side views of things out of cardboard that have more complicated shapes, you're welcome to try that. If you have curvy objects, you're going to need to do a top view as well as a side view. And I encourage you to just sketch with pencil before you draw in Sharpie and then cut. So my first step was drawing my lines in Sharpie, cutting along those lines to make my strips, and then attaching everything, laying everything out on the floor, and then I attached it with tape. You don't even have to attach things if you don't want to. Here's my ruler got a little messed up there, but here's my final. That's what my shave horse is going to look like. You don't have to attach things with tape if you don't want to. I do it just so they stay down, and then you can, even like when I go outside to my outdoor workshop, I can bring these pieces, right? Especially for me, the riser block is going to be one that's really important. This angle of the riser block, I can just take that right to my pieces outside, and I can either trace that or I can use my handy tool called a bevel gauge to transfer that bevel from my cardboard to my wood outside. So we can use them as guides for when we are ready to work with wood too. I hope you all have fun doing this. Try multiple objects in your house if you want. Try to see if you can get it exactly the same size. You can even hold it up if you tape it together next to the chair or the stool or the desk to see how accurate you got it. Have fun, everybody, and I'll see you on Monday.